This is the day I planned for all the pain to end. My divorce finalized, my marriage ended. All I had left to do was to take my Honda out on the highway, drift across the center line, and it would all be over. For 17 years, I grew up as a child in a family where incest was prevalent, where sexual, physical, emotional, and verbal abuse were a normal, everyday thing. My life became a series of broken relationships, one after the other, because I was bound and determined to be loved. I had promised myself as a little girl that I would be loved. I remember making that promise to myself many, many times. When you grow up, Debbie, I promise you, you will be loved. And not realizing who I was searching for, I went on a long search for love.
When I met Deb, she was a waitress in a bar. And I was an alcoholic that liked to drink, so that was a good reason to go check out the new waitress over at the local bar. After about 2 years, Debbie and I, we kind of got together close enough that we got married. Our marriage was not based on anything that was solid. It was just kind of based on, it seemed like a good idea at the time, and as long as it was fun, we'd go ahead and do it. And it wasn't too long after that that our marriage got real ugly.
They'd fight all the time and scream, and I'd be afraid. I'd either run into my room and cry, or I'd call 911, or I'd run to the neighbor's house and tell them they were fighting. And usually when they started fighting, one of them would always leave. Usually my dad. He'd run out of the house and slam the door really hard, and he wouldn't come back for a few hours. And it hurt me, and it made me very scared.
Jim and Deb were really struggling in their relationship, and Patty and I had been to a FamilyLife marriage conference, and it really affected my relationship with God and with Patty. And I saw that that's something that Jim and Deb really needed.
And he was really persistent. I mean, he just stayed after us, and we told him there was no way we were going to go through any more counseling. Our marriage was done. It's really strange how sometimes the smallest decisions in your life turn out to have the biggest impact on the way that it goes from there.
The only reason I came to the conference to begin with was because I had been invited and I felt I had nothing left to lose. I was going to be divorced in 9 days. My life was going to be ended in 9 days, and so why not?
We went to the conference, and the first night was kind of a surprise for me because they laid out how a marriage deteriorates. And man, they had our marriage nailed down to a T. I mean, the only thing that was missing was our picture up on the little tripod next to where he was speaking. I figured sure he was talking about us. And so then, that night, Deb goes up to the room and she figures, well, obviously our marriage is over because they've laid out exactly where we're at and we're way past there. So we can get divorced and I feel good about it. Now me, on the other hand, I figured it was only Friday night. This is a Friday, Saturday night, and part of Sunday thing. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out that if you know what's going on Friday night, then there's a very good chance they know how to get back from there. So for the first time in years, I had hope.
When the session ended Saturday afternoon, Jim and I went up to the room to do our project. And I was so frustrated that I couldn't. I slammed my book shut, went back downstairs to where Dennis was, and I had a lot of questions, and I thought Dennis might have some answers for me. I told him that I was interested in committing my life to God, but not my marriage, because that was going to be over in 9 days, and out of desperation I was going to commit suicide on the same day. And Dennis really cued in on my forgiveness issues, and he thought I should forgive my husband. That was a real struggle for me, because it was really the last thing I felt like doing.
When Debbie went downstairs to talk to Dennis, I stayed up in the room to do the homework. The homework for that night was forgiveness. It was the husband forgiving the wife and the wife forgiving the husband.
On the way up to the room to forgive Jim, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to say the words, but there's no way I'm going to mean it. But I have to do this so I can come back down and commit my life to God. So I went up to the room, And the first thing I said was, Jim, I need to ask you to forgive me. And Jim had been reading our project for that evening, and he said, no, I'm supposed to ask you to forgive me. Much later that evening, after Jim was asleep, I had a long talk with God and found out that He had a plan for my life and that He was part of that plan. And for the first time, I felt that there was hope. The next day, we left the conference with total hope and with a total plan in our hands.
After my parents became Christians, when they'd argue, it would always end up with them praying with each other. Instead of them running, one of them running out of the house, they would pray with each other. Even if it was through clenched teeth, they would still pray. And at first, I thought it was fake, that it wouldn't last more than a couple weeks. But after 6 months, I found out for myself that God was real and that my parents were going to stick with it, that they loved each other now and that they also loved God. So 6 months later, I became a Christian.
That first year after the conference, we were so excited about what God had done in our marriage and in our lives through the conference that we just told literally everybody that we knew. And we led 2 Home Builders Couples Series Bible studies in our home with a lot of couples. And at the end of that first year, we went back to the conference with 40 couples, not only from the inner city, but also from our relatives and the places where we worked.
It's kind of like being on the other side of the fence. Once you've crossed over that hurdle, you can look back and see where people are at behind you. And you can recognize what they're going through, and you can tell them, hey, I've been through that. I know how to get past that. And so you need to come on and try it.
There's a lot of pain and hurt in our community, a lot of violence, a lot of youth on youth crimes. The Godseys have reached out to a lot of these same young people. They have changed these children's lives. They have made a complete about-face. They've helped them make better people within the communities to spread the same gospel and help other people, their own family members, to bring them to Christ.
Me and my wife work with Debi Godsey and Jim Godsey with the kids in the hood by teaching them how to read the Bible, teaching them how to pray, teaching them how to love God, and letting them know that there's hope, that they can open up and that they don't have to draw back from us, and show them that we love them, and we want to show them all that they need to know or how to have a good relationship with God and live for Jesus all the way.
We met Jim and Debi about 5 years ago at a time that we had a great desire to bring children out here to enjoy the state forest and our property. They bring the children up to our home just for the family experience of grandparents and parents substitute, and to be enveloped in a loving environment and enjoying the outdoors.
When I was 12 or 13, I wanted to be a missionary. And I can remember having the map on the kitchen table, and my mother was crying because I was going to go into missionary work and she'd never see me. And then I went my own way as a teenager and a young adult, got married, got divorced, and lived in the world, and that's when I was really falling away from the Lord. And then Jim and Debi came into my life, and I feel like I'm a missionary now. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord has given me another chance. We have a purpose, and there's no turning back.
What took place in Jim and Debi's life and marriage is happening in thousands of homes across our nation. People's lives are being changed as they attend one of our Family Life conferences, use our biblically centered materials, and as they listen to our daily radio program, Family Life Today. As people apply God's blueprints to their lives and marriages, a family reformation is taking place. And that's what our ministry, Family Life, is all about. We're committed to restoring the soul of America, one family at a time.